A city of 350,000 people had just disappeared from every communication line Japan had. No radio signal, no telephone, no telegraph, no messenger, nothing. Just silence. And in Tokyo, in the underground war rooms of the Imperial Japanese Army, the most powerful military minds in Asia stared at their maps and asked each other a question that none of them could answer. Where did Hiroshima go? It is August 6, 1945. Japan's navy is gone. Her air force is finished. Her soldiers on the outer islands are starving, fighting with whatever they have left. And yet the Japanese High Command has not moved a single inch toward peace. Because to surrender, in Imperial Japan, was not simply a military decision. It was an existential one. It meant the end of everything they had built their entire lives around. Their honor, their identity, their reason for existing. So they kept fighting. At 8:15 in the morning, a single American B-29 bomber released a single bomb over the center of Hiroshima. The fireball reached temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. Within seconds, 70,000 people were dead. A city that had stood for centuries was replaced by a column of fire and smoke rising 40,000 feet into the sky. But in Tokyo, they knew none of this. They only knew that Hiroshima had gone quiet. The first sign came at 8:16 a.m., 1 minute after detonation. Tokyo lost all contact with Hiroshima military headquarters. They tried the railway lines. Nothing. They tried civilian telephones. Nothing. Every single communication channel running through Hiroshima had simultaneously gone dead. Not disrupted, not degraded, dead. The operators escalated. The report reached the Army General Staff within the hour, and a junior staff officer was put on a plane and told to go look. When his aircraft was still 100 miles from Hiroshima, he saw the smoke. A single column, still rising hours after the detonation, visible from the edge of the horizon. As the plane drew closer, the crew fell silent. There was no Hiroshima. Where a city of 350,000 people had stood that morning, there was now a vast, flat wasteland. The bridges were gone. The streets existed only as faint ghost lines pressed into ash. A handful of concrete skeletons stood at the edges of what had been the city center, like bones left after everything else had burned away. He landed. He walked through what remained. He spoke to survivors, people sitting in the rubble with burns so severe their skin had separated from their bodies. He gathered what information he could. He returned to Tokyo and made his report. Whatever the Americans had used, he said, it was not conventional. It was not a fire raid. The city was simply gone. The High Command listened carefully, and then they argued about whether to believe him. Army Minister Korechika Anami was the most powerful voice for continued resistance within the Japanese military. A large, physically imposing man with a samurai's bearing and a samurai's contempt for surrender, Anami had been arguing for months that Japan could still force a negotiated peace if she held out long enough. To accept that a single bomb had destroyed Hiroshima meant accepting that his entire strategy was wrong, that there would be no negotiated peace, that the war was, in every meaningful sense, already over. He was not ready to accept that. Japan's own physicists confirmed the truth within 2 days. Dr. Yoshio Nishina walked through the ruins of Hiroshima, took measurements, examined the blast patterns, and returned to Tokyo with a clear verdict. This was an atomic bomb, a weapon derived from nuclear fission, a weapon Japan had no defense against and no equivalent of. His report should have ended the debate. It did not. Because on August 8th, 2 days after Hiroshima, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan. Soviet forces poured into Manchuria, destroying what remained of Japan's largest land army within days. Japan's last diplomatic hope, that the Soviets might negotiate a peace, was gone. And still the Big Six could not agree. 3 wanted surrender, 3 refused. Then on August 9th, the Americans dropped the second bomb. Nagasaki, 70,000 dead in seconds, 35,000 more in the weeks that followed. That night, Prime Minister Suzuki did something almost unprecedented in the history of Japanese wartime governance. He asked the emperor himself to break the deadlock. Hirohito entered the room at midnight. The council knelt. And the Emperor of Japan, in a voice that witnesses described as strained with grief, spoke. He said that continuing the war was impossible. He said Japan would be reduced to ashes. He said the time had come to bear the unbearable. The council accepted the emperor's decision, but accepting it and actually surrendering were two very different things. A young major named Kenji Hatanaka had decided he would rather destroy Japan than allow Japan to surrender. On the night of August 14th, he seized control of the Imperial Palace with armed troops. He killed a senior commander who refused to join him. He cut the telephone lines. He searched for the recorded discs of the emperor's surrender announcement, determined to destroy them before they could be broadcast to the nation. He could not find them. Palace officials had hidden them too well. By dawn, his support had collapsed. The units he had counted on refused to move. His co-conspirators abandoned him one by one. Hatanaka walked out of the palace and onto the streets of Tokyo. He rode through the city on a motorcycle, broadcasting his manifesto, begging the people of Japan to keep fighting. No one responded. At 11 a.m. on August 15th, 1945, the emperor's recorded voice went out across Japan for the first time in history. Hirohito spoke in language so formal that many citizens could barely understand the individual words, but understood completely what they meant. Japan had surrendered. Hatanaka walked to the plaza outside the Imperial Palace and shot himself. Army Minister Anami committed ritual suicide the same morning, with a blade, in the traditional manner. He left a note that said simply, "I believe in Japan's eternal future. I have nothing more to say." Hiroshima did not end the war. That is the part history books skip over. The bomb fell on August 6th. Japan did not surrender until August 15th, 9 days later. In those 9 days, a second city was destroyed, the Soviet Union invaded, a coup was attempted inside the Imperial Palace, a senior commander was murdered, and the emperor had to intervene personally to force his own military to accept defeat. 9 days. 2 atomic bombs, 1 Soviet invasion, 1 coup, 1 murdered general, 1 imperial intervention. That is how deep the ideology ran. That is what it took, not to defeat Japan militarily because Japan had already been defeated, but to make the men at the top accept what had become undeniable. And even then, some of them chose death over the acknowledgement that they had been wrong. Because for some men, the war was never really about winning. It was about being the kind of man who does not stop. And no bomb, however terrible, however total, could change what kind of man you had decided to be.